With autism grabbing headlines this week, it is important to remember the real people, and especially the kids behind the diagnosis.
Yeah, one of our colleagues is now sharing his story about his journey on the spectrum and the support from his father in a new book that is out next week. Joining us is Leland Vittert, anchor of NewsNation's On Balance and author of Born Lucky, a dedicated father, a grateful son, and my journey with autism. Leland, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I think a lot of us here, your colleagues, and a lot of folks out in the public had no idea that you were diagnosed with autism. You never talked about it publicly. So why do it now? Why did you feel like this was the right time?
It's a great question. I didn't do it publicly. My parents didn't tell anyone from when I was diagnosed. No teachers, no friends, no therapists, nothing. And I think the reason now is because so many parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles feel hopeless and they feel helpless when their kid is struggling, whether it's ADHD or autism or anxiety or bullying in school. And Born Lucky is proof that there is hope. And as George Will, who wrote the foreword, said, the power, the mountain moving power of parental love. So this book, when you read it, will change your perspective and show parents how holding their kid's hand through adversity really can have enormous effects.
You know, it's so interesting because if you're a parent and you find out that your child has autism, even now, sometimes you're not sure how to proceed. You know, your kid is different, you know, and you try to make accommodations. And if they're very high functioning, you still expect them to be able to go through life like everybody else, and they can't. It's a difficult balance to work out for yourself.
It certainly is. Expectations is a great thing. As my dad, he wrote the afterword, he said I had zero expectations. There were two expectations in my house. One was about character and the other was about hard work. Those were unyielding standards that my dad had for me. But look, you know, we take you inside the little psychology testing center, and we've all been in those things, you know, the crummy chairs and the stale coffee and the magazines. And my parents, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, sent me off to be evaluated, which is any parent's worst nightmare. And then the psychologist walks out and says to my parents, we really don't understand what's going on inside his head because autism was not nearly as understood as it is now. It's understood what it is. How to deal with it, as you point out, is not. My dad did all sorts of things. You know, he was my best and only friend. So he would take me to lunch or to breakfast with his friends because no kid wanted to be around me. And when I would talk too much, he would tap his watch. And that was my moment to stop talking, number one. And number two, then to bookmark it. And later we would watch game film, metaphorically, and go through conversations and say, okay, why when, you know, Mr. So-and-so was talking, did you think whatever you wanted to talk about was more important? Why did you interrupt him? What about the joke you told did you think was funny? On and on. So it was teaching me on a minute-by-minute basis the social skills that come naturally to so many other folks.
Leland, I want to ask you what you made of yesterday's announcement at the White House, with this being something personal to you, personal for your parents. What do you make of it?
Well, a couple things. Number one, the timing here is interesting because we scheduled the release of this book long before we knew what RFK was doing. So these things have collided. I'm not a doctor. The book is not a prescription. It is not a cure. It is my story. That said, what I think is a TV anchor and political observer and reporter that's so interesting is how even Jay Bhattacharya, who I had on the show last night, the head of NIH, I said, why have autism diagnoses gone from 1 in 1,000 when I was a kid to 1 in 36 now, 3 times that for boys, and higher for poor and minority communities? The head of the NIH, he said, I can't tell you that. He said, I can tell you what scientists have been told to say. He said, but the science is not conclusive because for so long there were a lot of questions that you weren't allowed to ask. So, you know, is RFK an imperfect messenger given his past association with staging dead bears and embrace of some fairly wackadoodle things? Yes. Does that mean that we should diminish in any way his message of finding answers for the millions upon millions of parents whose kids have autism? And more importantly, perhaps for parents in the future? I mean, I think about it for my wife and I. No one can tell me how, if she and I have a kid, should I try or could mitigate the chance of that children having autism. So, or that child. So I think those are some really important things. And finally, we are starting to ask the questions. And as you guys know, as journalists, it shouldn't be the questions that get us in trouble. It's the answers.
All right, Leland, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. You can watch the Born Lucky special on News Nation Sunday at 8.